At 8:15 on Sunday morning, March 1st, 2026, the city of Dubai was jolted awake by explosions. Not a single blast, but a sustained sequence rolling across the skyline with enough force to rattle windows and draw people out of their homes and hotel rooms. Drivers stopped their cars. Tourists stepped onto balconies. Above what is routinely marketed as one of the safest cities on earth, contrails cut across the sky. These were Iranian ballistic missiles and armed drones, launched in coordinated waves. In less than 24 hours, 137 ballistic missiles and 209 drones were directed at the United Arab Emirates alone. The majority were intercepted. Emirati air defense systems destroyed 132 of the 137 missiles and shot down 195 drones. But interception does not mean disappearance. Burning debris fell across the city and into the Gulf, and at 8:15 that morning, one fragment landed on Jebel Ali. A fire broke out at the port. 3 hours later, DP World, the operator of Jebel Ali Port and one of the largest port operators on the planet, issued a notice that immediately reverberated across the global economy. All terminals at Jebel Ali were being halted, temporarily but entirely, as a precautionary measure. Within minutes, the world's largest container shipping company followed suit. Mediterranean Shipping Company announced it was suspending all worldwide cargo bookings to the Middle East region until further notice. That phrase matters. Worldwide cargo. This was not a local delay or a regional disruption. It was the suspension of the commercial framework that links economies across continents. And it happened within hours. The trigger was Operation Epic Fury, the joint American-Israeli military operation that killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, the previous day. The escalation that followed was neither surprising nor unforeseen. Diplomatic efforts failed. The Geneva talks produced no breakthrough. Deadlines passed. The decision that President Trump described as not easy was taken, and the consequences arrived almost immediately. What we are now witnessing is not simply a military crisis, but an economic one unfolding in real time. In the next 72 hours, developments at Jebel Ali, in the Strait of Hormuz, and across global commodity markets will determine whether the world economy absorbs this shock or fractures under its weight. To understand why, we need to be precise about what has been taken offline. Jebel Ali Port sits 40 kilometers southwest of Dubai's city center on the southern shore of the Arabian Gulf. By tonnage, it is the ninth largest port in the world. By container throughput, it processes roughly 14.5 million 20-foot equivalent units every year. That is 14.5 million containers moving through a single port complex in a country of just 10 million people. For comparison, the Port of Los Angeles, the busiest port in the United States and the entry point for roughly 40% of American imports, handles about 10 million containers annually. Jebel Ali handles nearly half again as much. In the first quarter of each year alone, the port processes approximately 3.6 million containers. That equates to around 40,000 containers every single day. Each of those boxes carries goods someone somewhere depends on: electronics from South Korea, pharmaceuticals from India, textiles from Bangladesh, chemicals from Europe, machinery from Germany, consumer goods from China. All of it funnels through Jebel Ali en route to markets in East Africa, South Asia, and the wider Middle East. And as of this morning, every one of those flows stopped. DP World operates more than 80 marine and inland terminals across 40 countries and moves around 10% of global container trade. When it shuts down Jebel Ali, its flagship facility and highest throughput operation, it is not making a local operational call. It is issuing a signal to the global logistics system that a central hub is offline and that everything must be rerouted. The problem is that there is no immediate reroute. No alternative port can absorb 40,000 containers a day with 24 hours notice. And Jebel Ali is not the only critical node affected. Dubai International Airport, the world's busiest international airport by passenger volume, is also offline. In 2025, it handled approximately 90 million passengers and 2.6 million tons of air cargo. It is not the busiest by total flights, but it is the most important hub for international connectivity. With both the port and the airport simultaneously disabled, two pillars of global trade and mobility have fallen at once. This convergence, maritime and aviation disruption occurring together, is something most economic models were never designed to handle. And that brings us to the significance of the decision taken by Mediterranean Shipping Company because it marks the line between a regional crisis and a global one. That decision by Mediterranean Shipping Company is the moment this crisis crosses a critical threshold. MSC is not a niche operator. Founded in 1970 and headquartered in Geneva, it operates a fleet of more than 800 vessels with an annual capacity of roughly 24 million containers. By fleet size, it is the largest container shipping company in the world. When MSC halts all bookings for worldwide cargo destined for the Middle East, it is not suspending a route. It is suspending an entire category of global commerce. Any shipper anywhere attempting to move goods to any Middle Eastern destination is effectively locked out of the market indefinitely. There is no timeline, no guidance on resumption, and history tells us what follows next. Other carriers will move in the same direction. They always do. When the market leader signals that the risk environment has crossed an unacceptable threshold, second and third tier operators read the same intelligence, consult the same insurers, and reach the same conclusion, often within hours. The insurance data was already deteriorating before Sunday morning. War risk premiums for Gulf transits had risen from roughly 0.05% of hull value to around 0.6% over the past 3 months, a 12-fold increase driven by escalating regional tensions. The overnight missile strikes will push that number significantly higher. Early estimates from marine underwriters suggest premiums could reach between 1.5 and 2% within 24 hours. At those levels, the economics collapse. A supertanker valued at $100 million would incur an additional $2 million in insurance costs for a single voyage. That cost does not sit with the shipping company. It is passed to the charterer, then to the commodity buyer, and ultimately to the end consumer. Electricity, fuel, food, pharmaceuticals, all of them absorb war risk premiums as embedded ongoing costs. Not once, but transaction by transaction. And crucially, these premiums do not normalize quickly. Insurance markets require stability, not headlines. Even if hostilities pause tomorrow, it would take months for underwriters to reassess the risk environment. Each additional day of conflict pushes those premiums higher and locks in inflationary pressure across the global economy. There is, however, a deeper structural issue here, one that has not been adequately explained in much of the public coverage. Jebel Ali is not simply a container port, it is a transshipment hub. Around 70% of its container traffic does not originate in the UAE and is not destined for it. Cargo arrives on ultra-large container ships and is redistributed onto smaller feeder vessels bound for ports that cannot accommodate megaships directly. This transshipment function is what makes trade possible for much of the Western Indian Ocean region. East Africa, Pakistan, India's western coastline, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Iraq, and Iran all rely on Jebel Ali as their primary redistribution node. Megaships cannot dock fully laden at Mombasa. They cannot safely enter Karachi's shallow approaches without offloading. They cannot serve Dar es Salaam directly at scale. Jebel Ali makes those connections work. When that hub shuts down, the effect is immediate. Downstream ports do not experience delays measured in weeks, but shortages measured in days. The supply pipeline is not slowed, it is severed. The World Bank estimated in 2024 that disruptions in the Red Sea added around $600 per container to shipping costs and extended Asia-Europe transit times by up to 2 weeks. But that crisis involved rerouting vessels, not stopping them. Jebel Ali's shutdown is fundamentally different. It does not redirect cargo, it strands it. Containers already en route are arriving at a closed port. Containers that were scheduled for onward distribution are sitting idle on the docks. Dozens of vessels expected to call at Jebel Ali within the next 48 hours are diverting, but there is nowhere adequate to divert to. The nearest alternative is Khalifa Port in Abu Dhabi. itself located in a country whose airspace is closed, whose airport infrastructure has been damaged, and whose government has instructed citizens to remain indoors. The contingency option sits inside the same threat envelope. The backup is within the blast radius. This is why attention now shifts inevitably to the Strait of Hormuz. Jebel Ali sits at its gateway, and the strait is the critical choke point that determines whether global trade flows or stalls. Overnight, Iranian forces launched 137 ballistic missiles and 209 drones at the UAE. While most were intercepted, debris fell across Gulf waters. The Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, with designated shipping lanes just 2 miles across in each direction. This is not a theoretical vulnerability, it is a physical one. Those lanes are tightly managed to prevent collisions, groundings, and inadvertent entry into territorial waters. When missile debris and interceptor fragments begin falling into those waters, the strait ceases to function as a commercial corridor. It becomes an active conflict zone. And no commercial captain nor any insurer treats an active conflict zone as a viable transit route. The shipping lanes through the Strait of Hormuz are narrow by design. At their tightest point, the inbound and outbound lanes are each just 2 miles wide, running through a waterway only 21 miles across. The International Maritime Organization's traffic separation scheme governs those lanes with precision. Any vessel that strays risks collision, grounding on shallow approaches, or an unauthorized entry into territorial waters. Under normal conditions, that system functions. Under missile fire, it does not. With Iranian ballistic missiles and drones falling into Gulf waters overnight, and with interceptor debris from Emirati and Saudi air defense systems raining down alongside them, the Strait of Hormuz has ceased to be a managed commercial corridor. It is now an active conflict zone. No commercial captain, having read the terms of their insurance policy, will knowingly transit an active war zone. And no insurer will underwrite that risk without war risk surcharges so severe that many voyages become economically impossible. Formally, the strait has not been closed. Iran has issued no declaration. The IRGC Navy has not physically blocked the lanes, but closure does not require an announcement. When missiles fall within meters of shipping lanes, when drone debris settles into those waters, and when underwriters refuse to price the risk at viable levels, the result is the same. Traffic stops. This is a functional closure, enforced not by orders but by physics and liability. The significance cannot be overstated. Roughly 20 to 21 million barrels of oil pass through the strait every day. It is the single most important energy choke point on the planet. Iran has threatened to close it for decades. What we are now seeing is the closest thing to that threat being realized, not through blockade, but through sustained kinetic risk that no commercial operator can accept. This brings us directly to oil prices, because this is the variable that connects every aspect of the crisis. Sustained disruption at Hormuz, combined with Iranian targeting of Saudi infrastructure and a conflict measured in weeks rather than days, produces price models in the range of $180 to $200 per barrel. At $150 per barrel, the European Central Bank's own modeling shows Eurozone GDP contracting by roughly 1.5% over 12 months. In the United States, Federal Reserve estimates indicate that for every $10 increase in crude prices above current levels, consumer inflation rises by approximately 0.8 percentage points. At $150, that equates to an additional 6 to 8 percentage points of inflation, layered onto economies already struggling with elevated prices. And Iran is not limiting its response to the UAE. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has announced retaliatory strikes against 27 American military bases across the region. Targets include installations in Qatar, Iraq, Bahrain, and Kuwait, including the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet. Saudi Arabia, home to the largest concentration of oil production infrastructure on Earth, has confirmed it is taking defensive measures as Iranian missiles also move toward the kingdom. The last time Iranian drones and missiles struck Saudi oil facilities was September 2019. That single attack temporarily removed around 5% of global oil supply overnight. Prices surged 15% in a single trading session, the largest one-day move at the time. That strike occurred in peacetime conditions, without carrier groups deployed, without advanced stealth aircraft in theater, and without a declared joint U.S.-Israeli operation. This morning's situation is not comparable. There have been multiple waves of attacks, and Saudi Arabia now sits directly within the impact zone. The clearest signal of how the global logistics system is interpreting this moment is not found in headlines, but in internal risk protocols. The world's second largest container carrier has not yet issued a public statement, but its decision-making framework is well documented from previous crises. During the Red Sea disruptions of 2024, shipping suspensions followed within 72 hours of the first vessel incident. This time, MSC moved within hours. That speed reflects how much the risk environment has changed. Maritime intelligence today is real-time. Shipping companies monitor missile launches, drone tracks, and air defense intercepts overlaid directly onto vessel positioning systems. Risk managers are not waiting for official briefings or next-day reports. They are watching events unfold minute by minute. And what they saw overnight was not a localized incident. It was a coordinated missile and drone campaign spanning the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, every Gulf state hosting major U.S. military infrastructure, and every commercial aviation hub linking Asia to Europe. MSC's decision to halt global bookings was not an overreaction. It was the fastest risk management response in the history of commercial shipping, and it was grounded in hard numbers. If even 5% of daily traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted for 30 days, not a full closure, just 5%, the global market accumulates a backlog of roughly 30 million barrels of stranded oil. Clearing that backlog once transit resumes requires weeks of intensified shipping at elevated charter rates. Add to that higher insurance premiums, longer voyage times, fuel surcharges, container demurrage, spoiled cargo, pharmaceutical shortages, and missed manufacturing windows. Every one of those costs moves downstream to retailers, producers, governments, and ultimately consumers. And at the center of it all sits Jebel Ali, the transshipment hub of the Western Indian Ocean, still offline. That is why this disruption is not theoretical. It is already embedded in the system. To understand the economic gravity of this crisis, it is necessary to address the political rupture at its center, the death of Iran's supreme leader and the vacuum it has created. Ali Khamenei was killed yesterday in an Israeli airstrike conducted as part of Operation Epic Fury. Israeli officials confirmed the strike. Iranian state media subsequently acknowledged his death, a confirmation echoed by international outlets. Within hours, Iran's deputy foreign minister described the action as the crossing of a very dangerous red line in an interview with CNN. That language was not rhetorical flourish. It was a signal to allies, to adversaries, and to commanders in the field that the constraints of conventional diplomacy had been lifted. Iran without a supreme leader is a state without a constitutional mechanism for de-escalation. Under Iranian law, only the supreme leader has the authority to authorize a ceasefire. In his absence, the Assembly of Experts must convene to appoint a successor. That process requires a quorum, formal deliberation, and a vote. In peacetime, it can take days. In the midst of an active regional conflict, with Israeli strikes ongoing and American bases under fire, it is practically unworkable. This is the succession crisis analysts warned about. There is no single authority empowered to halt hostilities. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which controls Iran's missile forces, does not require personal authorization from a deceased leader to continue operations already underway. Field commanders retain operational autonomy, and their institutional incentives favor escalation, not restraint. This is the political reality confronting global risk managers. When DP World suspended operations at Jebel Ali, the decision was not driven solely by the missiles that had already fallen, but by the expectation of what comes next, a prolonged period of instability driven by a command structure with no clear off-ramp. The civilian impact is already measurable. As of this morning, approximately 14,000 flights have been canceled or disrupted. Abu Dhabi's airport has suspended all arrivals and departures. Dubai International Airport, the busiest international airport in the world by passenger volume, is closed after sustaining damage. Doha's Hamad International Airport is operating under restrictions, severely disrupting Qatar Airways' global network. Across the region, airspace closures have stranded passengers from Beirut to Europe. Aircraft positioned in Dubai for onward flights remain grounded. Crews scheduled to report for duty are unable to reach their bases. The global aviation system, which operates on rolling 72-hour scheduling models, is being forced to absorb a shock for which it was never designed. The cargo impact is even more acute. Air freight carries perishables, pharmaceuticals, biological samples, live animals, and components essential to just-in-time manufacturing. Dubai's air cargo terminals are a critical artery in that system. Fresh produce for European supermarkets, pharmaceuticals from India, seafood from Oman, and high-value medical supplies all move through this hub. With terminals damaged and airspace closed, those flows have stopped. The consequences will be felt within days. Supply disruptions will reach Europe, South Asia, and East Africa within 48 to 72 hours. Supermarket inventories, hospital supply chains, and electronics assembly lines will begin to reflect the interruption almost immediately. Global institutions are already running the numbers. The IMF, the World Bank, and central banks are modeling scenarios that few policymakers have had to confront in decades. The closest historical parallel is the 1973 oil embargo, when Middle Eastern producers deliberately restricted supply in response to Western support for Israel. That embargo quadrupled oil prices over 6 months and triggered deep recessions across advanced economies. The mechanism then was political. The mechanism now is military, but the economic transmission is the same. Supply disruption, price spikes, inflation, and recessionary pressure across energy importing nations. The difference lies in scale and complexity. In 1973, global trade was smaller, supply chains were less integrated, and just-in-time manufacturing did not exist. Today's economy is profoundly interconnected. A disruption at a port in Dubai ripples through currency markets, energy benchmarks, shipping indices, and retail prices across continents. Consumers will not need economic models to understand the impact. They will see it in fuel prices, electricity bills, grocery costs, and eventually in job security as production lines stall. This is where the crisis stands. Operation Epic Fury was launched on Saturday. Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is dead. Iran is operating without a constitutional authority capable of ordering a ceasefire. 27 American military bases are under threat. Israeli strikes continue. Hundreds of missiles and drones have been launched across the Gulf. Jebel Ali port is shut. Global shipping to the Middle East is suspended. Major airports are closed. Airspace across multiple countries is restricted. War risk premiums are surging. Oil markets are opening sharply higher. And in the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow corridor through which roughly 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply flows, commercial vessels are not moving. Not because they have been ordered to stop, but because no insurer has declared the risk acceptable. That is the defining feature of this moment. The system has not been shut down by decree. It is seized up under the weight of risk. This series warned that this outcome was coming. Every deployment, every escalation, every failed negotiation pointed in this direction. Jebel Ali is burning. The world's busiest port is offline. The world's most important aviation hub is closed, and the consequences are no longer theoretical.